Next up, we have Environment and Climate Change Canada, or ECCC, ECCC, as others may call it. So ECCC is the department in the Government of Canada responsible for coordinating environmental policies and programs. And today, they're here to talk about their Low Carbon Economy Fund. I'd like to welcome Alana Johnson from Environment and Climate Change Canada to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alana Johnson. Can you hear me okay? Yep, thumbs up, great. All right, and clicker here. So my name is Alana Johnson. I'm a senior analyst at Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm very pleased to be here today to tell you a little bit more about the Low Carbon Economy Fund and funding opportunities under this program. So first, who are we? Environment and Climate Change Canada is the lead federal department for strategic action on a wide range of environmental matters, including predicting weather and environmental conditions, clean growth and climate change, conserving nature, and preventing and managing pollution. The department also administers various funding opportunities to support many types of initiatives, including projects aimed at supporting ecological health, conserving species at risk, and community-based environmental action. You can learn more about all of our funding opportunities that Environment and Climate Change Canada offers by visiting our department's website. So as mentioned, the funding opportunity that I'm here to tell you about today is the Low Carbon Economy Fund. So the Government of Canada is supporting projects across the country through the Low Carbon Economy Fund. Launched in 2017, the fund supports projects that cut emissions, help Canadians save money, and contribute to meeting Canada's 2030 emissions reductions targets. This investment also supports the local economy and helps to drive clean innovation. The fund is an important part of Canada's clean growth and climate action plans, including the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change and the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan. The Low Carbon Economy Fund is open to a wide range of applicants from across the country and supports projects that leverage ingenuity to reduce emissions and generate clean growth. The Low Carbon Economy Fund currently has two funding envelopes that you see here. The first one is the Leadership Fund, and the second one is the Low Carbon Economy Challenge. As you'll see, the challenge is divided into two funding streams, the Champion Stream and the Partnership Stream. The Champion Stream has a total of up to $450 million in funding, and the Partnership Stream has a total of up to $50 million in funding. So for purposes of this presentation today, I'll focus on the Challenge program, as the Leadership program provides funding directly to provinces and territories for their projects. So as you can see on the slide, please note that there are currently no intakes open under Challenge, but please stay tuned to our website for more information on future intakes, as the Government of Canada has committed an additional $2.2 billion to the Low Carbon Economy Fund through Canada's 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan and Budget 2022. So let's review who's eligible for funding under the Low Carbon Economy Fund. First, I'll briefly touch on the Leadership Fund. Provinces and territories play an integral role in implementing the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change. That's why the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund has provided up to $1.4 billion to provinces and territories that have adopted the framework to support their programming. Under the Leadership Fund, provinces and territories have worked in partnership with the federal government to identify emissions reductions projects to receive funding. They have been eligible to receive up to $30 million, plus additional funding based on their population size. Next, you'll see here the list of recipients who have been eligible for funding under the Challenge Fund's Champions and Partnership Stream. Under the Champions Stream, eligible recipients have included businesses, municipalities, universities, schools and hospitals, not-for-profits, public sectors and boards, Indigenous communities and organizations, as well as provinces and territories. And under the Partnership Stream, eligible recipients have included small and medium businesses, not-for-profits, small municipalities, and Indigenous communities and organizations. Now that we've covered who's eligible for funding, I'll share with you a high-level overview of the eligibility criteria for projects. So as mentioned, there's currently no open intakes, therefore please keep in mind that eligibility parameters that I'll cover today may be different than what you learn about for future programming. Under the Low Carbon Economy Fund, projects selected for funding must result in measurable GHG emissions reductions towards Canada's 2030 emissions reductions target and demonstrate materiality, incrementality, cost effectiveness, and other merit-based criteria. So by materiality, I mean material GHG emissions reductions that are measurable, achievable, and sizable enough to contribute toward Canada's GHG reduction targets in the year 2030. And in order for a project to meet the incrementality requirement, a project must obtain GHG reductions beyond what would have occurred without the requested funding being provided. Projects that proceed because of regulatory requirements, routine maintenance, or pre-existing commitments are ineligible for funding. And lastly, in terms of cost effectiveness, I mean the ratio of federal funding requested per ton of carbon dioxide equivalent reduced in 2030. Proposed projects must also adhere to cost share requirements, which would be outlined in the eligibility criteria material, and the maximum percentage of total project costs that the federal government can contribute varies depending on the ultimate recipient of the funding. So under the champion stream, there may be a minimum of $1 million and a maximum of $25 million contribution per project. Under the partnership stream, there may be up to $10 million of funding. Proposals are reviewed to confirm that all activities are eligible, and more information about eligibility criteria is included in guidance for each intake. And I'll briefly cover eligibility activity types under champions and partnerships. So eligible activity types under champions may include stationary or mobile equipment retrofits for energy or fuel switching, building envelope upgrades, clean electricity production for own use, low carbon fuel production for own use, cogeneration or combined heat and power production, heat recovery, district energy and or heating, landfill gas capture, organics diversion, it's a long list, industrial process emissions changes, industrial project use changes, carbon capture and storage, and carbon capture and utilization. So that was a list of eligible activity types under champions. And sectors that are eligible to receive funding under the partnership stream may include waste, where activities may be methane capture or organics diversion. In the industrial sector, activities may relate to energy efficiency or fuel switching. The forestry and agricultural sectors are also eligible. In low emissions fuel production is eligible, and electricity and or energy production is eligible. So when applying for funding under the Low Carbon Economy Fund, please also take note of the types of activities that are not eligible for funding. So for example, under the latest Champions intake, activities that were not eligible for funding included new construction, feasibility or pre-engineering studies, research or development and demonstration projects, educational or capacity projects, purchase of new vehicles, and public transit infrastructure and vehicles. So now I'll move on to the application processes for the two challenge streams. So the Champion stream has a two-stage application process. First, a prospective recipient will submit an expression of interest, which Environment and Climate Change Canada officials will review to assess eligibility. Second, applicants with eligible expressions of interest are invited to submit a formal proposal. Environment and Climate Change Canada then evaluates the proposal for merit using a competitive process. For example, additional benefits may be considered. Additional benefits may include clean growth benefits, such as reductions in air pollution or improving resiliency. Additional benefits may also include best-in-class practices and technology and potential for replicability. Or positive benefits may include positive impacts for First Nations, Métis, or Inuit communities and organizations. Of course, projects are also assessed for project feasibility and risk. And if a project is approved, the recipient is invited to sign a funding agreement. The agreement states the terms and conditions under which the Government of Canada provides funding for the project. And for your awareness, the Champion Stream of the Low Carbon Economy Fund launched an open intake just recently in January 2022 with over $200 million in funding available to support projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Expressions of interest that were received by the March 2022 deadline were recently reviewed, and applicants with the eligible expressions of interest have been already invited to submit a formal proposal. And the partnerships application process follows a similar model. First, there is a screening step where we review the proposal to ensure that all activities are eligible, incremental, follow the other eligibility criteria. The proposal is then evaluated by a cross-disciplinary review committee comprised of expert reviewers, where they review things such as risk, the annual tons of greenhouse gas emissions reductions that would be achieved, and other co-benefits. And lastly, once a proposal is evaluated, the formal recommendations are made to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada for approval and funding determination. We would then notify the applicants of the outcome once a decision is made, and if approved for funding, would issue an approval in principle and move on to signing a funding agreement. So now that I've provided an overview of the eligibility criteria, I wanted to share with you some examples of projects in the prairies that the Low Carbon Economy Fund has contributed to. So the first example is an investment of approximately $530,000 from the Low Carbon Economy Fund, which was made to support a project that converts municipal waste into biomass energy in Banff. The funding is for the town to build a biomass district heating system that will see a cumulative reduction of about 6,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions over the lifetime of the project. So that is equivalent to removing approximately 1,800 cars from the road for 1 year by replacing natural gas with sustainable wood waste to heat for municipal buildings. So this $1.3 million biomass system also reduces the need to haul waste to the landfill, and it's also helping to increase the solar electricity capacity of the buildings. So this funding, this project was funded by the partnership stream of the Low Carbon Economy Challenge. So the next example is a local one in which the Low Carbon Economy Fund provided approximately $2 million to support the City of Calgary's biomass production and carbon sequestration project. So this initiative reduces emissions by planting 300 hectares of trees over 3 years at the city's willow plantation. So over the lifetime of the project, the city will see a cumulative reduction of about 200,000 tons of GHG emissions, equivalent to removing approximately 61,000 cars off the road for 1 year. The willow plantation will also use municipal biosolids as a fertilizer and help create a carbon storage sink that leads to fewer GHG emissions. And this funding came from the Champion Stream. And I'll share one more example of a recent project. An investment of approximately $1.1 million was made under the partnership stream to support clean energy initiatives in the town of Lumsden, Saskatchewan. Through this funding, the town will install solar panels at 4 municipal facilities and put 3 of them on track to reach 100% net zero emission status. Under this project, the town will install solar panels at a recycling center, a waste treatment plant, and 2 sewage lift stations. Over the lifetime of this project, the town will see a cumulative reduction of about 13,000 tons of GHG emissions. So that concludes my presentation of overview of the eligibility criteria for the Low Carbon Economy Fund and some examples of the types of projects that we fund. Thank you very much for attending and learning more about the Low Carbon Economy Fund today. I highly encourage you to visit the Low Carbon Economy Fund website to learn more about the program, and stay tuned for future opportunities. As well, you can visit the Our Environment portal, which has hundreds of online resources, including funding programs. If you have any questions about the Low Carbon Economy Fund, please come find me this afternoon and we can talk, or feel free to send us an email. Thank you very much.